August may be one of my worst reading months this year. I didn't have a lot of books that I absolutely hated, but I feel like I didn't have enough books that I wanted to scream and shout about either. And I don't know about you, but like I just hate a mid month. Like the mid feelings on a book are like some of the worst in my opinion. I'd rather love or hate it. I did read a total of 10 books this month, and that's pretty normal for me, which ends up being 4,066 pages. I do think this ends up being on the lower side, like just slightly. I feel like 500 more pages puts me at like average amount of pages I read, because my average pages per day is 131 and I'm typically above 150 pages per day. As I said earlier, I gave out 0 5-stars. I gave out 1 4-star only. I gave out 7 3-stars and then 2 2-stars, but I did give out 0 1-stars. My average star rating is a 2.90. Not very happy with that. I would definitely like it to be at least above a 3. I read 2 new releases, 6 backlist books, and 2 last year releases. And for genres this month, I read 6 fantasy romance, 1 thriller, 1 horror, and 2 sci-fi. That's all my stats. As I said, I don't know, I just feel like they were kind of mid. I'm not super excited to talk about any of these books this month, but we'll go through them together. I counted these as separate books in my stats because I was also counting them as separate books for Battleathon, but the first 2 books I read was Blood Sanctuary Part 1 and Blood Sanctuary Part 2. These are both just under 500 pages long, but they do make up one whole book, but everywhere you look, they're separated. You have to get 2 ebooks. You have to use 2 Audible credits. I think on Goodreads, they're also separated. So I counted them separately. I gave them both 3 stars. I think part 1 was less loved by me than part 2. But at the end of the day, I just didn't like this very much, which is really sad because it's a sequel that I was really looking forward to. It's the 3rd book in the Blood Grace series, and I loved book 1 and 2. This one, however, just felt so dragged on. I feel like nothing happened. There was probably 100 pages of plot in an 800-page story. Mostly this was hanging out with our 2 characters, watching them get to know each other, learn about each other's cultures, and it's very much a character study. It was time with the characters, which if you know anything about me, I'm a plot girly. I need to love and root for my characters, but at the end of the day, I want there to be good plot. I want there to be action. I'm not really into like slow character study books, and that's what this was, and I'm really sad. I'm hoping that the next book in the series really continues the plot because I'm so invested into the series, and I do love these characters quite a bit, which I think is why it did get a 3-star over a 2-star in the end, but not enough to have that carry a whole book for me. I do still recommend giving the series a try because I loved the other ones so much, and like I think it's so unique. It's about Leo and Cassia. Leo is a Hesperine, which is a vampire in this world, and Cassia is a human. She's actually the bastard kid of the king. She's not really meant to be out and about. The king doesn't really like her, but she is definitely plotting against him, trying to make the world a better place. The vampires and the humans have been at war for like a long time, but in order to minimize casualties, they have been making treaties, and the time has come to redo their treaty, make it new again, re-sign it, and so they've gotten together, and for the first time, Leo and Cassia meet each other. It's the first time they've met someone of the opposite species, and they learn that their species are enemies for probably the wrong reasons, and that history has been a little bit rewritten about them, and they're not as evil as they seem. After that, I read A Road of Bones, and I give this book 3 stars as well. I can't tell you anything about this book. I read this book and it left my brain. Like nothing exists in this book anymore. All I remember is vampire deer and being very let down by how they weren't super creepy and things like that. So yeah, I remember absolutely nothing from this book. I have a live show I have to do. I'm filming this on Tuesday. I have the live show on Friday, and I'm like, how am I supposed to participate? Because I don't remember a single thing, which I think says a lot about this book. The number one thing I remember is just like not being invested into the love interest. This is a fantasy romance, a romantasy with very little romance in it, and there's a reason for that. You really don't root for the romance in my opinion, and there's a clear reason for that, and it just didn't work for me. I also just wanted more of the rich world building. I think I wanted this to be a little bit darker and a little bit more brooding because it is a Viking romance, and when I think Vikings, I'm thinking these like more like brute force characters. These just felt like mercenary thieves on a road. The road even wasn't that dangerous. I feel like the plot of this book says she's running for her life on the road of bones, which is not safe, and then I felt like the road didn't feel any different than a regular road in a society like this. I don't know. I just did not vibe with this one. It's really hard to talk about because I don't remember enough. I'm hoping that Melissa and Mel will remember more at the live show so that I can discuss this more in depth there, and they'll like pique my brain, because sometimes you just have to say something and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't like this, and this, or I liked this, and this. And I really just felt like this one fell flat. I don't think I will be continuing. It felt like any other fantasy romance that I've ever read, and so I just don't think that I want to continue in this, even though know I've seen a lot of love for it online. After that, I picked up The Claw on the Crown by Sarah M. Craddock. This is my favorite read of the month. I give it 4 stars. You can see me smiling already as I talk about it, which I think always says a good thing. This was just so unique to other things I've read. It probably wasn't the most well plotted out book. In fact, it really wasn't. Having just a different style of story than what I'm usually reading in romantasy really worked for me. I really liked the characters in this, and I liked Sarah M. Craddock's writing. Like, her prose is stunning. The deep discussions she has about things is stunning. Her metaphors, things like that, is very beautiful. This follows our main character Imral, who is chosen to be the king's first consort. In this world, there is a bloodline that runs this island that they're trying to keep alive, and so the king gets consorts to have his kids. He never marries, he just has these consorts, but the first consort is also queen, and the next heir to the throne will come from whoever is that first consort. So she's chosen as the first consort to the king, and these consorts get bodyguards. Essentially, these bodyguards have to fight for their spot. They have to be like the best soldier out of all these hundreds of soldiers or whatever to then protect one of the consorts, and they run a tournament, things like that. The tournament's not like a really big part of the story. I was kind of sad it wasn't. But their job is to protect the queen, but also make sure she's not sleeping with anyone else, because there can be no doubt that the queen's child or the consort's child is one of the heirs to the king. They literally sleep in the same room as the consorts, everything. They never take their eyes off them, so that there's someone there that can vouch that was the king's child. However, our bodyguard is on a quest for revenge, and he thinks the easiest way to have revenge is to pop a baby, or at least have there be enough suspicion that that baby is his baby, that it kind of ruins the bloodline going forward. And this is where the plot kind of falls apart, because I don't know, they should have just cut off their wing-wangs in order to make it so that the soldier couldn't ever sleep with them. Why are you trusting this person wholeheartedly? And they put them into very compromising positions in order to test the fact that they're not into each other. There is a lot of weird things that happen that I think were really fluff and not needed. However, I just had so much fun with this, and Drazen has one of the dirtiest mouths to ever exist, and I was obsessed with it. The things he said to her, oh my god. Someone please talk to me like that. By someone, probably my boyfriend. I wish I had some of them marked down. I wish I had tabbed this or annotated or something, because there are so many incredible quotes. Not even dirty sexy quotes, but just quotes on womanhood and power and sexuality, because essentially we're watching Imral as she takes a hold of her sexuality because she's been forced into this position to have sex with someone, but she decides that she's gonna have sex with someone else, and what power that brings to her and things like that. And I thought there was some really beautiful story, maybe not plot, but story within this that I really enjoyed, and I definitely will be reading more from Sarah M. Craddock. And I'll be thinking about Drazen's sturdy words for a long time. Next up, I read Promised Envire. This was a fun little romantasy dragon shifter. I give this one 3 stars. I did actually quite enjoy this one. It might have been one of my more favorite reads of the month, actually. Might continue on in this series, I might not. It kind of sucks because they're Audible exclusive only for the audiobooks, and I definitely would want to listen to the audiobooks, but I don't expect them to be my next new favorite series. I think it's just an easy series to listen to while you're doing things. If you're looking just for a quick easy binge, I really enjoyed this one for that. I think I said in my vlog it'd be a very good video game listening to audiobook, or cooking audiobook. When you're doing other tasks, this would be really fun to listen to, in my opinion. We're following a world where the dragon shifters and the fae have been at war, but the dragon shifters end up leaving because they're losing the war, and they end up going in a portal. One dragon shifter has to stay behind, and if he dies, the portal opens and people can follow them, and so he ends up just being put to sleep so that no one can wake him and he can't die. However, the only person who can wake him is his mate if she were to come see him, and our main character stumbles into his cave whatever situation and wakes him. And then we have to deal with some of the issues that are happening, because there's also a power corrupted king ruler happening in this, and there's a prophecy about her and the dragon and things like that, and we follow all that happening. I don't really want to give too much because I feel there's not a lot to this book, but it was really fun and easy, and I enjoyed it. It has stuck in my brain quite well over the month, and I feel that says something for it. Yeah, I think that might have been my second favorite read of the month. After that, I picked up Kill for Me, Kill for You, which is a thriller about 2 women who meet up in it's not an AA meeting, a counselor meeting. It's like a meeting for people who have gone through trauma, and a support group. That's what it's called. They go to a support group. They decide to plot to murder each other's big bad, because if they murder each other's person, then there's no connection to each other, because even in support groups, they're anonymous and no one knows each other's names or anything, so there's no connection to the two people. So they think that they can get away with murdering them, and we get to watch that happen and that unfold. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the first half more than the second half. I think I wanted it to be a little campier than it was, and I think even me giving you that premise is kind of like leading you a little bit astray to what the story is, which is hard, but I don't know how else I would tell you what the story is without spoiling it and like things like that. So like, I don't know, I feel like this might have been just a little too all over the place for me, but it was fun. I think it could have been a little bit more action-packed as well, and had a little bit more depth to like the storylines of like grief and things, which I wish we got more backstory on characters and things like that. I think that they were a little surface level for me, but overall I would recommend this as a thriller and I enjoyed it. Then I read The Laws of the Skies. This is a Lord of the Flies reimagining. I hated Lord of the Flies. I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. This follows a field trip of 6-year-olds. They go out into the forest for an overnight field trip, and then one of them decides to take matters into his own hands, and we see what happens when children have no rules, no laws, and are just left to their own whims. This did not need to be 6-year-olds. I hated the fact that it was 6-year-olds. They had no character development because they're 6-year-olds. Like, their choices did not have a lot of like thought process to them because they're 6-year-olds, and 6-year-olds just kind of do what they want to do and things like that. And I just like couldn't connect to the story. The writing style was a little all over the place. Like, we would literally switch line for line between POVs. Not for me, but if you were a Lord of the Flies fan, I would recommend picking it up, but I'm not a Lord of the Flies fan. I picked up Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. I gave this book 3 stars. I think this is my 3rd favorite read of the month, and that's kind of sad because looking back on this, I'm like, wow, this was a lower 3 stars. This is marketed as a horror. When I told you my stats, I put it under sci-fi. I think it's a sci-fi through and through. We're following a main character who goes with a crew to a station that is a ghost station. I think it's mismarketed because the cover of this book and the vibes of the stuff makes me think that there's going to be ghosts and stuff. Like, I thought ghost station, but they meant ghost station as in uninhabited. No one's been there. And I don't know, I don't have a lot to say about this one either. Go watch the vlogs for these because I was very much in depth during vlogs, but I feel like all of these books, because they were so mid, just have left my brain. I think truly my biggest problem with this is that I wanted it to be a horror. I wanted those creepy moments, and the suspense in this just wasn't there. Our main character was too self-aware for the suspense to really hit me. I did like the ending of this. I liked how it all wrapped up. I liked the sci-fi elements. I wish I had gone into it thinking it was a sci-fi and not a horror because I want different things out of those books. Overall, I think it was just like mid. I liked the ending better. The last half of this book is way better than the first half. It's way too long. There's no reason for this book to be this long. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it. After that, I picked up Navigating the Stars by Maria V. Snyder. I gave this one 3 stars. I did like this one. However, I think I've just aged out of the demographic for this book. This is a YA coming to age sci-fi, and I just felt like it read very YA. I just couldn't connect to the characters. It breaks the fourth wall, which is a very YA literature thing to do. There are adult books who do it as well, but I just think it's more common in YA books, and it just read, like, the writing of it, like the prose felt very, very young. It is a YA book. I'm not the target demographic. There's nothing wrong with that, but my enjoyment is what I rate books on, and I just like couldn't enjoy this that much because of those issues. This follows our main character Lyra, who her parents are these specialists on these alien species, and when a new planet is discovered with the fossils of these alien species, they are sent to go there. Lyra is pissed off because she was told that this last move would have been her last, and she like made a life here, but instead she now has to go to this new planet. To get there, there's going to be some time dilations, so she will still be 16, but all of her friends are going to be like 50, 60, depending on how much time jumping they do over their lives and things like that. So she feels like her life is being destroyed. She vows to not make friends on this new planet because if her parents take her away, she doesn't know what she's gonna do. However, on the way to the planet, she makes friends with the security officer's son, and they kind of have a budding romance, and they figure out that there is cracks in the system, and as she's hijacking into the tech, she learns that there's some suspicious stuff happening, and they are on the case. Like every YA book, she's just so much better than all the adults, and she can do things that the adults can't do, and it just didn't work for me, I think, because of YA tone. I've heard from previous people that a lot of Maria V. Snyder's books have a younger tone, so I think that I will not be picking up more from her. I did think at one point I wanted to pick up Poison Study, but I just don't think that like her style of tone is gonna be for me. But I think as a younger kid, like if I had read this when I was 15, I would have really loved it. Like it's not a bad book, it just isn't a book for me currently. And lastly, I picked up The Hunted Heir, which is the sequel to The Veiled Kingdom. This is the most depressing thing I've ever said. I gave this book 2 stars. I'm not gonna go into depth in this because it isn't a coming up vlog, but overall I just feel like this did not hit the mark. This book did not need to exist. Honestly, it might be a 1 star looking back on it. It either needed to be like a short story or way longer. There's no plot in this, nothing happens. Our characters react so differently than they did in the first book. The ending of the first book feels like it didn't even matter, and I just really did not enjoy this, and that has me very scared for the 3rd book. Because like, where was the substance and why was this book so short? I said it could have been shorter because nothing happens, but like when a 2nd book is shorter than the 1st book, that automatically terrifies me, and this is like 100 pages shorter. What happened here? What happened in the writing? How was the 1st book so addicting and fun and the 2nd book had none of that in my opinion? The Veiled Kingdom follows our main character, who is a princess, and she escapes because the king has her prisoner. The king does not like her. He tortures her because she is powerless, and then she ends up escaping and running into the hands of the rebellion, and she has to hide who she is because she knows the rebellion would use her against her dad, and she just wants to be free. She just wants a life without any of this drama. But as she works in the rebellion and works her way up, the son of the rebellion leader is kind of onto her, but there are already feelings involved, so it gets a little messy. The 1st book is so fun. I would recommend reading the 1st book, but I can't tell you if you should read the 2nd book until I've read the 3rd book in like a year, because I did not enjoy it. I would love to know what books you loved this month, because I need some of your endorphins into my system through these comments. If you're interested in seeing these being read, I have 2 vlogs that I did this month that I will leave up on the screen. I go through my thoughts way more in depth in these. If you're not feeling chatty, leave me a horse emoji down below, and then have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.